We're going to be using this text, the Bidet's Revival, as our mentor text. And so today I just want to read through it, and I might mark up some stuff as we go through, just things that I'm noticing both about the writing and perhaps the topic. But this is a great example of kind of an inquiry-based essay that has really strong evidence, brings in some outside social issues, and has a strong conclusion at the end, which is the type of writing you're being asked to do. So let's read this together. I've been completely Americanized, my host declares proudly. The bidet is gone. In my time as a travel editor, this scenario has become common when touring improvements to hotels and resorts around the world. My heart sinks when I hear it. To me, this doesn't feel like progress, but prejudice. That's kind of a nice phrase I'm going to underline there. And I also just noticed that, right, we begin here with dialogue. Americans seem especially baffled by these basins. Even seasoned American travelers are unsure of their purpose. One globetrotter asked me, why do bathrooms in this hotel have both toilets and urinals? And even if they understand the bidet's function, Americans just often fail to see its appeal. Attempts to popularize the bidet in the United States have failed before, but recent efforts continue, and perhaps they might even succeed in bringing this old world device to new backsides. The classic bidet is a miniature bathtub-like feature situated next to a toilet with taps on one end. Its tub is filled with water and the user straddles themselves over it to wash below the belt, but it took centuries before arriving at this version. All right, so they're kind of describing here. The bidet was born in France in the 1600s as a washing basin for your private parts. So we're going to go back historical, it seems like. It was considered a second step to the chamber pot, and both items were kept in the bedroom or dressing chamber. Some of the early versions of the bidet look like ornamental ottomans. The basins were inset in wooden furniture with short legs. Often lids made of wood, wicker, or leather topped the seating portion, distinguishing its function to a degree. The name is rooted in the French word for pony, which offers a helpful hint that the basin should be straddled. But it also picks up this moniker because royalty used it to clean up after a ride. Hauling water was a laborious process in the era, but bidet bathing was a regular indulgence for the aristocracy and upper classes. This little bathing workhorse was so much a part of high society that the artist Louis Leopold Boilly, who painted French middle and upper class life, showcased a young woman with her skirts hiked over the wash basin in one of his works, providing a racy bidet counterpart to Degas' bathtub portraits. They were such an integral part to civilian life that the imprisoned Marie Antoinette was granted a red trimmed one while awaiting the guillotine. She may have been in a dank rat-infested cell, but her right to freshen up would not be denied. Okay, so we have a little like humor, I'll put like haha, and we have some really specific kind of examples, right, of this, and then this author example. Versions like the 1700s, so it looks like I'm going from the 1600s to the 1700s here. So it looks like we're kind of maybe doing chronological order as we read this. Versions of the 1700s sometimes featured sometimes featured a water pump handle that could deliver an upward spray from a refillable tank. As indoor plumbing caught in the 1800s, the bidet moved from the bedroom into the bathroom, and the standard model came into use, a tiny tub that could be filled with a faucet at either end. The first of these plumb bidets were most common in high society, but its popularity soon spread, both to other social classes in France and to other countries in Western Europe, as well as Latin America and Middle East and Asia. Throughout this bidet boom, the United States resisted its appeal, and the reason might have been for the power of first impressions. Americans were introduced to bidets on a broad scale during World War II, where troops were stationed in Europe. GIs visiting bordellos would often see bidets in bathrooms, so they began associating them with sex work. Given America's puritanical past, it made sense that once back home, servicemen would feel squeamish presenting these fixtures in their homeland. But even before the war, bidets were linked to sex and scandal. In the United States and Britain, where various forms of douching were thought as a pregnancy preventive, bidets were considered a form of birth control. As Norman Hare, a birth control pioneer, put it, the presence of a bidet is regarded as almost a symbol of sin. The present-day American sociologist Harvey Molotov agrees, concluding that the device was tainted with French's hedonism and sexuality. Bidets have such difficulty, even all the power of capitalism can't break the taboo. So we have two experts here. I'm just going to put in here. All right. While they were truly terrible at pregnancy prevention, bidets could be helpful for other taboo, menstruation. As Teresa O'Neill demonstrates in her book Unmentionable, women's periods at the time were largely not spoken of and quietly tended to with jelly rags. It was a messy and private affair that had no commercial answer. But as a selling point for bidets, menstruation was possibly on par with unwanted pregnancies and prostitution as undesirable and unspoken during the pre- and post-war years. In terms of finding commercial success, it was more a hindrance than a help. Right, so we have this idea of it being taboo. In the United States, bidets were called a kind of feminine failing, women's sexuality, women's unwanted pregnancies, and women's biology. As such, they were shunned. So she's kind of starting to answer her question, why don't Americans use the bidets? Well, because of women issues, I'll put, because she lists all these things. All right, let's continue on. Meanwhile, other countries continued to embrace the bidet. As it spread into Northern Europe and Southern Asia, the design morphed a bit. A mini shower attachment connected to the toilet became a popular variation on a separate basin. This design was similar to a nozzle patented by John Harvey Kellogg in 1928, intended for use by the patients at a sanitarium he directed. It certainly didn't catch on the way his cornflakes did. Haha, right? A little humor there. In 1964, the American Bidet Company took another run at making the bidet more palatable by combining the toilet seat with a spritzing function. The company's founder, Arnold Cohen, created this device for his ailing father. Studies have shown, and we have a link here, right? So this is more clear evidence, that the bidet bathing can help heal rashes, hemorrhoids, and other irritants. But Cohen also saw his mission as changing the habits of a nation, weaning us off the Charmin. Unfortunately, Cohen, a former ad man, struggled to broadcast his message on what he called the sitz bath. I installed thousands of my seats all over the suburbs of New York, but advertising was next to an impossible challenge, he said. Nobody wants to hear about tushy washing 101. While America was deaf to Cohen's message, another nation was listening, Japan. That same year, Cohen met with representatives of a Japanese trading company, Nichimen Jitsu Yigo. The firm eventually worked up its own design, which was modeled after the sitz bath. By 1980, another Japanese company, Toto, would pioneer the washlet, a multi-function control panel-driven bidet toilet hybrid that was enthusiastically adopted by Japanese households. As Toto's general manager of restrooms product research put it, we did what others were reluctant to try. We brought electronics into the water closet. All right, and I just want to notice here, right, we're still doing this kind of chronological order. The washlet, a love child of cleanliness and technology, brought bidet into the future. Cohen's sitz bath thus became the grandfather of today's smart toilets, which feature control panels that enable users to modify water pressure and direction. Some panels add other indulgences like seat warming and deodorizing functions. So we have lots of examples here of like how it has progressed. These devices were part of a technology upswing in Japan in the 1980s. But while other Japanese products born in that era, like Nintendo gaming systems, were enthusiastically embraced in the United States, the Toto Super Throne remained a curiosity to this day. One reason the washlet hasn't caught on is its price. The most basic of Toto's washlet models rings up $499, making it more in line with a lavish small appliance. Wow. I'm just going to put an exclamation point. When Totos were installed in Google's headquarters in Mountain View, California, the space toilets, as TechCrunch called them, were a symbol of the company's over-the-top perks, a privilege from which employees could check their stock options. Washlets, once again, made bidets something of the upper class. Right? So remember, we're kind of answering that question of why don't they use the bidets? Well, here, they're really expensive. The United States has largely ignored the bidet and its spin-off, but has warmly welcomed an alternative product, the flushable wet wipes. These wipes have become a cheapy workaround to address many of the same issues as the bidet, but they come at a much higher cost to the public. Wet wipes and wet naps were a mid-century invention used for everything from diaper changes to messy barbecue cookouts. But it wasn't until the early 2000s that major companies like Procter & Gamble enjoyed success marketing them as a replacement or follow-up for toilet paper. Today, these damp cloths have grown into a $2.2 billion industry. The market is so massive that it's inspired 3 male-targeted wipes, Bro Wipes, Dude Wipes, and One Wipe Charlies, which position themselves as testosterone-fueled counterparts to feminized bidets and hygiene products. They even have popped up in music, including a rap song by Cameron, in which the chorus, "Go get your wipes," is prompted for freshening up before sex. While wipes are far more accessible than washlets, costing a fraction of the Super Throne, a 252-pack costs $9.92, they've also created major damage to our sewer systems. Once flushed, Once flushed, the wipes glom together in a fat from food waste and can what is called a fatberg, an iceberg-style blockage that can clog up a whole system. To extract a fatberg and make needed repairs can be incredibly pricey. In London, back in 2015, one 10-ton fatberg cost the city $600,000. And last September, the city discovered that another that's approximately 140 tons, which could very well cost 10 times or more as much to remove. Okay, so here we have kind of an environmental issue. So I'm just thinking back, right? One is the fact that they were connected with women, another was upper class, and here we have an environmental. These troubles have prompted lawsuits, legislation, and around the term flushable. And in May 2015, the removal of the Federal Trade Commission of certain brand wipes made by NicePack that was deemed unsafe for sewers. Environmental groups have also vocally condemned wet wipes for the plastic fibers, which they say add to the glut of garbage floating in this ocean and harm marine life. The author likes to do this little alliteration where you repeat the sound. Given these downsides, are Americans ready to abandon this disposable solution and finally embrace a simple spritz of water, right? Going back to our first inquiry question. Mickey Argwal, the founder of Think, says yes. Argwal has captured mainstream attention with her Thinks Panties, an environmentally conscious pad/tampon alternative. Thinks faced criticism for lewdness in some of its ads, which proves in some ways that the stigma around menstruation is alive and well. And the company took a huge hit when Argwal was accused of sexual harassment. But the press for the product itself has been generally positive, especially among millennials. Now, Argwal, along with other investors, is backing a toilet attachment called Tushy, which adds a small water spigot under the rim. It amounts to a spritzing jet attached to the standard toilet seat. There's no separate washing basin or newfangled washlet functions, but at $69, it could be the Goldilocks middle ground between high-end washlets and dirt-cheap wipes. Arnold Cohen had trouble advertising the sitz bath, but marketing has changed since the 1960s. Tushy's website doesn't bother with euphemisms, plainly saying that its product is for people who poop. On the homepage, it commands, "Stop wiping your butt and start washing with Tushy," and bluntly argues, if a bird pooped on you, would you wipe it off? No, you'd wash it off. With this frankness, together with streamlined web design and chatty blog, Tushy is taking hard aim at the female millennial market that responded so well to Thinks. If Tushy succeeds, it will show that the bidet can be embraced for the very reason it was once shunned, its feminine associations. And maybe it finally crosses the Atlantic, it can also cross the gender divide. All right, so notice just a couple things about the reading that we did, right? We can see some of her writing techniques. We also see some of the sources that she used. We also see her organization and kind of that chronological as we go through. And we're going to be using this quite a bit as our mentor text as we go throughout this essay and look to kind of model our writing off of this style.